What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for Game Week 9. I do have my wildcard chip active, so essentially this is going to be going through and looking at what that current draft looks like. I'm also going to take you through how I did in Game Week 8. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. So we'll go through this quickly because it feels like a lifetime ago with the international break, but I got 54 points and I took a 4-point hit, so 50 total. It was a bit of a small red arrow. I'm down to 641k. I'm still in a position where I'm not overly concerned about what my overall rank is right now. There's still loads of points to play for, and the amount of points that people have are quite tightly packed together, so no major concerns, although it would have been nice to go into the international break with a green arrow. And annoyingly, I was looking at doing two things for Game Week 8. One was to potentially bring Son in as a 1-week punt before I wildcarded in Game Week 9. The other one was just to wildcard in Game Week 8. In the end, I did neither, and both of those things would have got me an additional 17 points, so that would have been a green arrow. Just when all that stuff came out that Son was pretty much going to be benched, I just couldn't go for him. And I think when you make that decision time and time again, most of the time it will be correct. It just so happens that this time he was benched and he came on and got a hat-trick. That is just variance. That is just FPL. It happens sometimes. It is massively frustrating because that was really the only kind of premium I could go for, because I was already tripled up on Man City, so I couldn't go for Kevin De Bruyne, which would have been like kind of second choice behind Son. So it is a bit frustrating. In the end, I went for Bowen, who I was going to get either way. He would have been on my wild card. He would have come in alongside Son. In this case, he came in alongside Perisic, who got an assist and still managed to get a 2-pointer because he got yellow carded when he was off the pitch. So it just didn't go well. I don't think the choice not to wildcard was necessarily a bad decision, because any player I kept, like Jesus and Gabriel and Cancelo and Ederson, and like Ederson, Gabriel and Jesus probably wouldn't have been on my wildcard. They all returned. It just so happened they didn't get massive scores. They only got kind of 6-pointers. So I would have done better on wildcard. I would have had a Harry Kane. I probably would have leaned towards captaining him as well. So overall, a bit frustrating, but that happens, right? I think it was the correct decision not to go for Son. I just wish I'd gone for it anyway, right? An off the bench hat-trick. That would have been real nice, but it just didn't happen. So 54 points, 4-point hit. Not great, especially when Haaland, played Wolves, who were down to 10 men for so long, only came away with 1 goal. But it is what it is. We're on wildcard. Let's see what it looks like. So let's start off with the goalkeepers and defenders. We'll also touch on the bench as well. It is worth noting I do have 0.6 million in the bank with this draft, so I could use it to make upgrades elsewhere, especially obviously the goalkeepers, which we'll come on to in a minute, because I'm sure people are looking at Ward and Everson and wondering what the hell that I'm doing. But I do think having that extra money in the bank might leave me a little bit more flexible over the next couple of weeks in terms of transfers. Obviously, we've got the blank game week to contend with, which I am obviously thinking about when I'm putting this wild card together, but there are also a lot of fixtures between now and the World Cup, and I just think that congestion could mean maybe a few more injuries here or there, and having that extra money might just allow me to make a transfer down the line that I'm not currently considering. So that is one thing that I'm thinking about. Let's just talk about the goalkeepers, right? I think this is, for me at least, the most difficult decision on wildcard, because ultimately I want to spend 5 million plus. I want to go for someone like Jose Sarr, Fabianski at West Ham, or even Nick Pope, right? Possibly even Alisson at Liverpool, but I don't think I'd want to block that third Liverpool spot off. So that's what I want to do, but I'm finding it really tricky to get the money for that. So then I can come down to a 4.5 million goalkeeper. With the money in the bank, I can afford to do that. So I could use the money to upgrade Ward to someone like Guaita instead, or Everson to Guaita. The problem is, if one of them loses their place and then I get the Leicester goalkeeper wrong, i.e. that Everson suddenly becomes the number 1 and I'm stuck with Ward, it means I possibly don't have a keeper. So I could go for Raya, who's not going to lose his place, or someone like that, but I'm just not a big fan of Brentford's fixtures from a defensive point of view, whereas Leicester, at least for the next 4 game weeks, do have some pretty nice fixtures. And if I do have a transfer down the line, maybe for the last 4 weeks I could bring in a different goalkeeper. But essentially, Ward and Everson are in there for just ridiculous value, right? 7.9 million. I don't think Ward is going to drop before the deadline. That could even be 7.8 million value. But I'm not expecting a huge amount of clean sheets. It's just what they're allowing me to do with the rest of the team. So I'm not saying I won't change that. I might go for Guaita and Ward, but I just worry if at some point Guaita gets people have just got in my head about Guaita, that maybe if he gets like a slight injury or something, that Johnston will come in, and then if I haven't got him, I've got to rely on Ward. and if he doesn't play, then I'm stuck, right? I've not got Everson there, so I've got no goalkeeper, and I just don't want to leave myself in that position. And I feel like right now the only way to guarantee having a backup goalkeeper is to buy 2 from the same team, and Everson and Ward are the cheapest way to do that. Another option I'm looking at is Begovic and Pickford for Everton. That would be 4.5 for Pickford and 4 for Begovic, but their fixtures aren't really good until game week 13 to 16, so it's a little bit of a mixture about which way to do it. But right now I'm on Ward and Everson. I really want to get to 5 million plus, and I can do it, but it leaves me with a squad that I'm just not happy about. So right now I'm probably going to go for the Leicester play. They've at least got some good fixtures now. They've had some pretty bad ones. They can't get any worse. Surely they cannot get any worse. Just quickly touching on the bench, Andreas is obviously there. He's been in my team the whole time. Nailed on midfielder who's cheap. Probably not going to swap him out. I've then got Gay for Crystal Palace, who's got a nice fixture in game week 12. I think it's Wolves at home. Obviously you got a blank there. And Webster's got Nottingham Forest at home that same week. Now the way this team is set up, I don't necessarily need to have 2 defenders for that week. But I don't necessarily trust having to play Andreas Pereira all the time. I think he's a really good bench option, but it doesn't mean that I want to play him if I don't have to. So in game week 12, he's got Aston Villa at home, so it wouldn't be the end of the world to play him, but I just wonder if Gay against the Wolves and Webster against Nottingham Forest are slightly better. Obviously, if I did trust and play Andreas that week, I could downgrade one of them to Williams and leave even more money in my bank, and that's how I get up to kind of a 5 million goalkeeper. So that is on my mind. Otherwise, the 3 main defenders, Cancelo, Trent and James, I don't think there can be a huge amount of arguments about them. I know that people don't rate players like Trent and Salah right now, but I'm just thinking ahead. Game week 12, I'm going to want them, so I'm just reducing the amount of transfers I need later on by getting them in right now. I do kind of agree that a lot of this comes down to that Brighton game, because if they blank then, they got Arsenal away, Man City at home, I'm then not expecting a huge amount of points, so I do need an immediate return from them. I wouldn't say it's then a failure if they don't return, but that would make me a little bit happier if they get something against Brighton at home. Obviously Cancelo I don't really need to say much about, and I think James is just great value at 6 million. The one that was missing is Trippier, and I can fit him in as well and go 4 at the back, but it just makes game week 12 that much harder to manage. And I actually think Newcastle's fixtures over the next couple of weeks, there's a few there where I'm not sure they're going to keep a clean sheet. So that's why he's not in there right now. But when we get to the end of the current draft, I'll do a little bit of tinkering and show you how I could fit him in. So with my 4 midfielders, they are pretty much all locks in this team. I think they've basically been in every single draft that I've made. With Zaha, for example, Crystal Palace have got great fixtures from game weeks 10 to 16. It's one of the reasons that I'm looking at possibly going for Guaita in goal. If I did that, by the way, I probably would just swap Gay to someone else like Nico Williams and just bank the extra cash. But with Zaha, one of the benefits of going for a game week 9 wildcard was to limit the amount of transfers needed later on. So I don't really see any reason to go for someone else this week and then transfer to Zaha next week. I might as well just reduce the amount of transfers that I need and leave myself open to kind of being a bit more flexible moving forwards, just in case anything else crops up. So he's a lock in the team. So is Madison. The fixtures are just too good to turn down. No matter what you think about Leicester, and ignore what my team looks like right now. I've not put this team into FPL because I'm still kind of looking at price changes and stuff like that. But Nottingham Forest at home, Bournemouth away and Leeds at home are really good fixtures to target. And I don't mind Crystal Palace at home being in there as well. I do think, and I said this yesterday on Transfer Tips video, in game weeks 13 and 14, if everything goes smoothly with my current plan, I probably will look to move him on, but I think he's one of those players that if I got to game week 13 and I had to hold him, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But in this little schedule here, which is one of the reasons I'm slightly concerned about Ward and Everson, they got 3 away games, Wolves, Everton and West Ham, and it's not the only reason I'm concerned about them, by the way, and Man City at home, so they're not great fixtures. So Madison might have to be transferred out later on, but we can at least get 4 game weeks under the belt and then see how we feel, right? So he's definitely locked in. Martinelli's just there for the value pick. I could go for Barnes as well at Leicester. I've got the 0.6 million to get him. The problem then is I've got Barnes, Maddison, Ward and Everson. Someone has to go. It would have to be a goalkeeper, and then I've got no money to upgrade them. So I just don't see how I can work someone else into this team when I got Martinelli for 6 million. He's already gone up by 0.6, and I don't think he's going to be sold enough where that price is going to come down. I think people are going to want him after the blank, and there's not really a huge amount of other £6 million midfielders on offer right now. Sinistera could be one, but it just doesn't feel worth getting rid of him when the fixtures after the blank are pretty good, right? So if I can manage up to that point, and look, Spurs at home and Liverpool at home are not great fixtures, but then it's Leeds away, that's pretty good. And if I can not get rid of him, but if I can manage the blank game with him in my squad, he then runs into Southampton away and Nottingham Forest at home. So while he's pretty much nailed on, I'm more than happy to keep him in my team. So he's a lot. And then so is Salah, and I'm probably going to captain him this week. I think in game week 8, it was close between Haaland and Kane, and those that went Kane came out with more points. I think it's the same this week. I think it's pretty close between Salah and Haaland, so I'm probably going to go for Salah. I don't think it's a dead cert that he gets loads of points because Brighton is not an easy fixture, but they do have a new manager. I think that new manager that's come in, I think I read a report that he's more there to kind of continue the work that Potter was doing rather than massive overhaul of the team and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they set up in pretty much the same way. Maybe, as more and more weeks go on and he gets a bit more time with the squad, he'll start implementing his own kind of ideas and stuff like that. But first game after the international break, players have probably been away on international duty. I'm sure we're going to see a similar team. So I don't expect it to be a walkover for Liverpool, but I think the break will have probably done them good. Yes, Salah had to travel in the international break, but he missed the second game, so he's back. As far as we know, Thiago's fit, Matip's fit. They're not going to have to play Milner and players like that. So I expect Liverpool to come back with a little bit of a bang. And if you look again, I know underlying numbers, some of you hate them, but they are still like a top 2-3 team for expected goals, non-penalty, and they're still top 5 for defence. So given that we all think they've played slightly below standard so far and they're still putting up good numbers, that tells me at some point their fortunes are going to change, and I'm just banking on it being this week. If it doesn't work, and if Haaland smashes Salah again, of course, I'm going to look like an idiot, but I'm prepared to back what I think, right? I know a lot of people disagree. That's absolutely fine. Like, it's your own team, right? If you don't want Salah, absolutely you shouldn't have Salah. I'm just kind of giving you the reasons why I have him in. I'm prepared to take that risk over captaining Haaland this week. I think I might change my mind on that because I don't think Man United at home is that bad of a fixture for Man City. They're definitely going to score in that game, and if they do, Haaland will probably be involved. I'm just hoping that Salah, who's a midfielder, has a little bit of an easier chance to rack up a big score. We'll just do one over on him this week. Of course, next week, Southampton at home, I'm definitely captaining Haaland. But this week, I think that there is a good chance that I go for Salah. And right now, I've been saying this for a few weeks, to be fair, and it hasn't worked out. He's a bit of a differential. He has been sold, and I don't think many people are going to get him back because they just feel that strongly about his price and kind of Liverpool in general. So I'm just backing him to do fine. His numbers are fine. Liverpool's are good. And I think, at some point the fortunes will change. I'm just going to bank on it being this week. And then we bring in the forwards. It probably shouldn't be too much of a surprise to see Haaland and Mitrovic in there. I didn't get on Mitrovic when he was 6.5 million, but I did get on him when he was a little bit cheaper than he is now. So as long as he's come back from the international break unscathed, the manager says there's no issues or anything like that, he's definitely going to be in this team. And I can see him being one of those players that remains in the team all the way from game weeks 9 to 16. Right now, I don't actually see a huge amount of transfers, but sometimes that's a good thing because that means I can react to things that happen, like injuries, suspensions and stuff like that. When you look at the fixtures for Mitrovic, the only two I would say that are even slightly concerning from now until game week 16 is game weeks 15 and 16 themselves, which is Man City away and then Man United at home. But given he's nailed on, minutes are always good, he's on penalties, he's not really a huge concern. And to be honest, Man United at home is probably not that bad for him anyway. So he's not really one I'm ever going to be highly prioritising to take out. It'll just depend on what's happened then. If I've got 2 free transfers going into game weeks 15 and 16, maybe I'll use one on him, but no plans to do that. And same with Haaland, right? Nobody is selling him right now unless he gets injured. There's value tied up in him. He's just doing too well. You expect him to score every single game. He just can't go anywhere. The interesting thing is, there's a chance for me anyway, probably not for you lot, but for me, that I only captain him once over the next 4 game weeks. If you look at Haaland's fixtures, I've got him captain there on the screen, but just ignore that because I've not set the wildcard team up yet. So I think I will probably go for Salah this week. Again, not 100% setting that in stone. In game week 10, I'll definitely go for Haaland against Southampton at home. That's too good of a fixture to miss out on. In game week 11, Salah obviously plays Man City at home and Haaland's away to Liverpool. They're playing against each other. I think if I was going to go for one of those two, I'd probably take Salah at home. But realistically, I'll probably go for someone like Mitrovic against Bournemouth at home instead. Or possibly look to how I could get a Spurs player in. Maybe Salah to Son and then back to Salah again after that. That could be an option as well. But I don't think I'm going to captain Haaland this week. And obviously game week 12, that's a different story because he hasn't got a game. So he has been like permanent captain in a lot of people's eyes. But I I don't know if I'm going to captain him much more than once over the next 4. So that might make or break my season, or at least the first half of the season before the World Cup, because those decisions can really hurt or they could really benefit you. And I just feel like there's maybe a good opportunity to go a little bit differential compared to other people when Haaland has got some tougher fixtures. Obviously, when the easier fixtures are there, he's an obvious captain. The other player I've got in my forward line is Solanke, right? He's caused a little bit of a stir, as always happens in the international break. People are very bored, so they get caught up in things like Solanke. He has been talked about a lot. Look, he's 5.7 million. I'm really not expecting much from him. I think the way people talk about him is though we're expecting a goal every single game. I'm definitely not expecting that. He's only 5.7 million. The reason he's in there is for the same, not the same reasons, but similar to Mitrovic, right? Mitrovic is obviously a better player, but he's nailed on. He's on penalties. 80 to 90 minutes should be good, right? He's always going to be there. And it allows me to have a little bit of money left in the bank and also have a decent bench to cover all these kind of potential issues that could come up and the blank game week in game week 12. Now, as most people will point out, Trippier is cheaper than Solanke. So I could go for 4-4-2 and go for Trippier instead, but that leaves me with a 4.3 million forward that just isn't going to play. So then I'm heavily reliant on the other 2 players on my bench. I can afford, if I stick with Ward and Everson, to have Solanke and Trippier, but that gives me no money in the bank, and I feel like it just leaves me a little bit inflexible. And to be honest, there's a few fixtures over the next couple of weeks for Trippier where I'm not sure he's going to get the clean sheets. I know he can get attack and returns, as we saw against Bournemouth, but I'm kind of just willing to bet against him for a few weeks and possibly get him back for his fixture in game week 12 before then removing him again. So that's why I've got Solanke in. It's no more than that, really. I don't expect him to get a huge amount of returns. I'm just hoping that he can match or outscore Trippier and then leave me with a better bench and a bit of money in the bank. So if we look at Solanke just really quickly, it's a bit like Fulham. I know they are a poor team and they haven't attacked well so far. We haven't seen a huge amount from Solanke. Obviously, he was injured, got 45 minutes against Liverpool, so he's played 3 games against Wolves, Forest and Newcastle and come away with 1 goal, 1 assist. If you could do that over the next few weeks, I'd be absolutely happy with that for 5.7. But I think the fixtures are just pretty good all the way until game week 16. So again, it's about putting in a player that I can play every week, that I know if they get a dodgy penalty, he's going to take it and hopefully score it. And I can just leave him in there. I can worry about other things in my side. And perhaps after the blank, I look to downgrade him down to a 4.3 because I don't need the bench so much, and then move to a 4th defender instead. But I think for now, he's probably going to be in my team. Again, nothing's 100% guaranteed around here, but I think he's probably going to be in. He's been in enough drafts at this point. I kind of just like him for 5.7. I just don't like the other forwards around that price. Simple as that. So let's take a look at a couple of the other options that I have, mostly revolving around Kieran Trippier. I feel like he's so sacred to people at this point. It's almost like committing blasphemy to even consider not having him in my team. But I want to talk about the reasons why I am considering that. So I've put this draft into a website called FPL.team, which has a transfer planner. The 2 changes from the draft you've just seen are Gay to Nico Williams and Webster to Trippier. I've got just enough money to do this. It does say I've got minus 0.2 million, so I'm a little bit short, but that's because it doesn't take into account the use of price changes I've made over the international break. So Kukurea, for example, went down in price, but I sold him before that happened, okay? So that's why it says minus 0.2. So I think for this, I'd have both Solanke and Trippier. So it gives me a pretty decent bench, and it's going to help me cover game week 12. But I just think for me, Trippier is like a little bit of an issue over the next couple of weeks. So straight away this week, am I fully confident that Trippier against Fulham away outscores Solanke against Brentford at home? I know most people will be, but essentially I'm putting in a defender that's playing against Mitrovic, who I'm hoping is going to score. Now, if you've watched my videos for a while, I don't mind when my players, like my attackers and defenders, play against each other. When you make a pick for like the next 4 to 6 game weeks, that's going to happen sometimes. That's okay. But on a wildcard, I've got a choice for that not to happen. So we're all hoping that Mitrovic scores, but we're also hoping that Trippier gets 1 or 2 attacking returns to make him worthwhile playing. So I think I would be happy playing Solanke over Trippier that week. In game week 10, it's a little bit different. I think Trippier's got Brentford at home. Solanke's got Leicester at home. I'm in the same position there where I'd have to play Solanke against my goalkeepers. But the goalkeepers are really just there for their incredible value at 7.9. And ultimately, given how Leicester have played so far, Leicester at home is not necessarily a fixture that I want to miss out on. But I would probably just about give that to Trippier. So that's probably 1 each. And then you come on to game week 11. Trippier's got Man United away. So I would definitely bench him for Solanke that week. So in the first 3 weeks of my wildcard, I'd probably be happy playing Solanke in 2 of them. Arguably, because it's Leicester at home, I'm okay playing him in that fixture as well. So I'm just questioning whether I absolutely need Trippier. Obviously, we go into game week 12, then it's a little bit different because 3 of my players are going to blank: Cancelo, Martinelli and Haaland. So maybe for that week, it actually works out pretty nicely. And I think I'm in a position where my team value is pretty good. So if I can hold Trippier and Solanke, perhaps I just give myself that benching headache and just roll with that team. My only slight doubt with it is I've got no money in the bank, so little flexibility. And if I do want to upgrade a player later on, I've probably got to downgrade one of my defenders, so Trippier, or possibly downgrade Solanke instead, which isn't an issue, but it just adds an extra, it possibly adds an extra transfer down the line. So that's why I'm a little bit put off. I don't think it's awful to have both of them, because I think having a benching headache is not as bad as we make it sound, right? It's okay to have players on your bench that can score good points, that you can bring in for good fixtures, but I just worry about that little bit of flexibility. So it is possible for me to have both. The other option, which I think most people would prefer on paper, is just to get rid of Solanke completely, commit to playing 4 at the back and just having Trippier there as a set and forget option, and spending a little bit more money on the goalkeeper so I don't have to have the double up for Leicester and just go for Fabianski instead, who I do think has some pretty nice fixtures. Wolves, Fulham, Bournemouth, Palace and Leicester at home all the way up until game week 16 is pretty good. I could also go for the double up on Trippier and Pope, and I think anyone that did that in game week 8 made a good decision. I would have done exactly the same, but I think on game week 9 I probably just wouldn't risk it and I'd just go for one, because I look at the Newcastle fixtures and think it's going to be pretty tough to keep a clean sheet, Man United away and Spurs away, and Fulham away. I don't know if that will be difficult, but I'm hoping that it will against Mitrovic. So possibly only 2 of the next 5 for Newcastle. I'm banking on a clean sheet, so I don't think I'd go for the double up, right? So this looks okay. There's a little bit less money in the bank than the draft I showed you first of all, only 0.3 million. And I'm always a little bit concerned about having so much money tied up in a goalkeeper, because it just feels like later on down the line when you need a bit of money, that's always the first spot you look at. But again, we are only looking from game weeks 9 to 16, so maybe it could be worth the risk. And then I've got Nico Williams on the bench. So we'll just fast forward to game week 12. Bearing in mind I'd have to probably play Trippier against Man United away, or Andreas against Bournemouth, or Nico Williams against Wolves in game week 11. Maybe that's not the end of the world. Having to play Trippier, who's quite attacking, not necessarily a problem, but it is something I'm thinking about in game week 11. Then we get to game week 12, where I've got 3 blanks, and I would have to use a transfer on Cancelo. Now, one reason I'm slightly drawn more towards this draft now than I was maybe a week or so ago is because I kind of forgotten about Robertson. I was thinking about doing a Cancelo to Trippier move with that first draft and then back out again. But if I have Trippier in from the get-go, I could do Cancelo to Robertson for game week 12, have him in there, bench Martinelli for Nico Williams, play Andreas Pereira over Haaland, and then it's not necessarily so much of an issue that I have that dud forward on my bench. It doesn't necessarily give me options in other game weeks, but it's also not the end of the world for game week 12. And if Everson has won his place by then, I would play him ahead of Fabianski. But one bad game for Fabianski is not the end of the world either. So I could go that route. And then in game week 13, I just switch Robertson. The problem I'd have here is I'd have to switch Robertson back to Cancelo when he's got Nottingham Forest away. I probably wouldn't want to do that. But let's say I stick to the plan. I bring Cancelo back in. Obviously, Haaland goes back in ahead of Nico Williams. And I take out Andreas for Martinelli. But straight away, I've got Trippier against Spurs away. And I'm not seeing a clean sheet there. So Trippier is one of those weird ones where I would have had him. Let's go back to game week 9. I would have definitely had him on game week 8 wildcard, and I would probably have no plans to take him out. But I just look at the opportunity I have for game week 9 and just wonder if he's the best one to go for. I think if I do go for him, I'd probably just hedge my bets and have Solanke as well, because I'm not quite sure about the Cancelo to Robertson and then back again switch. But that is another option. Let me know down below which draft you prefer. I'm almost certain it's going to be the final one with Trippier, but I'm kind of liking that first one. I know the goalkeepers are awful, but it does give me a bit of flexibility having that money in the 11 and also in the bank for any future moves that I have to make. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. We'll have the game week preview tomorrow, final thoughts on Friday, and of course a deadline stream on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.